Hello again, and welcome to Chirp Splat Guides, a rundown on how to use weapons in both anarchy battles and turf war. Today, we're going over the Brellas, an interesting weapon class. It's basically shotgun with a deployable shield on the front. As usual, I'll be starting with the basic variant, in this case the Splat Brella. A slow firing weapon that doesn't have great ink coverage, but it does go pretty far and leaves a solid line. Don't let this fool you into thinking your shots have good range though. Unlike most weapons, the Brellas shoot out pellets in a spread, meaning its damage drops off quickly the further away the enemy is. Each pellet does 16 damage, but as you can see, the most possible damage you can do is 81. Let's take a quick look at the other unique feature, the deployable shield. After firing, if you hold down the button, the umbrella itself will open, working as a 500 HP shield. You cannot fire while it is open like this. After a couple seconds, the umbrella will launch, becoming a forward-moving wall and allowing you to fire again. You can use this as cover to move in on enemies, as it does leave an ink trail behind. And now for your gear. A straightforward build would look probably something like this. You could also use that primary chest slot for Ninja Squid to allow some tricky plays when playing around a launched Brella. If you're feeling a bit memey, you can also go for a comeback, stealth jump, revive speed kind of build. In general, just remember builds are flexible, so feel free to mix it up when you're comfortable with it. Next, the loadout. Its sub is the sprinkler, which honestly is just kinda good to help make up for your coverage. The ink strike is your special, which is pretty strong for zone control. So, the title of this series is How Do You Win With? And I really must mention, that question is being asked in a very different way for the Brella compared to the other weapons. The Splat Brella in particular is quite weak this game, especially thanks to the netcode, which will often cause you to get shot, even though your Brella appeared to be open in time. So, how do you make the best of it? We'll start in turf war like usual. Start by helping your team claim center field quickly. Your quick firing, solid, straight lines does help a lot for this. You'll want to stay at medium range when trying to splat. Remember, at least it will take you 2 hits to finish someone off. There's no point in making sure every single pellet's hit. As long as you can do 50 damage a shot, your time to splat will be the exact same. Some might disagree, but in turf war, I don't think using the deployable shield is worth it all that much. Randomly launching it off to confuse folks is fine, but the usual strat of playing around the launched Brella doesn't really do much since there's no combat line really. More often than not, it'll just bring you into enemy territory, someone will flank you and you'll get splatted. And dragging out a fight to be a little safer usually just results the person you're fighting to get some reinforcements. You're better off just splatting the enemies quick than covering the ground with the time you saved, in my opinion at least. In Anarchy, it's a completely different story though. Your main job is to give yourself and your team more safe zones near the objective. In skirmishes, you'll want to shoot, open your Brella, then put it back down when your opponent leaves an opening or starts trying to flank around your shield. You can also use your shield to block shots, launch it, and then play around the launched umbrella, using it as a shield. You can use this to push up on longer ranged enemies in relative safety. Either way, you help define where your team's front line is. You need to be aware of when to push, and when falling back is the better option. If your Brella is traveling its way into enemy territory, but you've only splatted one of them, and none of your teammates are to be seen, that's probably a sign you should not follow that Brella. You should instead fall back and regroup. On the other hand, if you got a wipeout, leave the objective to your teammates, run up, and push the line further into the enemy base. Keep in mind, if you're in solo queue, don't stubbornly sit in the enemy's base, because there's always a chance your team will ignore the objective as well. You can also use this shield to defend allies jumping into the fray, and when you're jumping back in yourself, you can deploy the Brella basically right as you land, which lets you do some pretty spicy jumps, as long as you don't run into those netcode issues I mentioned earlier. Brellas are also much stronger with a teammate. If you can have a bud nearby with a stronger weapon that you can defend, they can be pretty much unstoppable. So this is notable for other weapons too. If you see a Brella on your team, try hanging out with them. You'll both appreciate it. Next is the Undercover Brella, also known as the Matchmaking Brella, because by far the best for playing solo with random groups. The most damage you'll be able to do is 40, so you'll be splatting in 3 shots. Unlike the others though, you can fire while the umbrella is open, and it won't ever launch out. It only has 200 HP, but something interesting that many don't know is when you get a splat or assist with the weapon, the shield gets fully restored, so you can chain together multi-splats quite well. The sub is the ink mine, which matches the weapon thematically, but is honestly pretty random from a gameplay standpoint. Use them as you ever would, put them in hot areas people might step in, or flank routes, and hunt them down after they trigger it. The Reef Slider is your special, which is fantastically strong and fits the weapon, allowing you to deposit yourself right into the enemies. The main difference in gameplay between this and the main Splat Brella is you don't need to hang around your team quite as much. You're pretty strong in a 1v1. While it will take you longer to splat opponents, if they fight you head on, you effectively have 3 health bars. Keep an eye out for when an opponent tries to slip around behind you. Drop your shield to turn and defend from that direction. Make use of your shield regenning on splatter assist. You can hold your ground as long as you keep splatting squids. Otherwise, honestly, this is a pretty straightforward variant. Now it's time for the Tenta Brella. This thing is pretty wild. The first immediate difference you'll notice is the absolute unit of a shield you've got, with 700 HP and the girth to match. You can soak up a lot of damage for your team with this one. It fires incredibly slow, but unlike the others, it can one-shot opponents. Another interesting quirk, the ink coverage doesn't just trail behind the tent, it also covers an area in front of it. And due to the slow speed, you can swim on either side pretty easily. Something to note, most would recommend not having any run speed up abilities if you plan to use this weapon, because your walk speed is incredibly close to the speed the shield travels. So, for the Tenta Brella, your job is primarily to claim space for your team. A lot of what I said for the Splat Brella applies, but with the Tenta, you are 100% your team's front line. Your job is to claim ground and hold that ground. You want to be focusing more on the macro strategy rather than making micro plays. Push up when opportunities present themselves, like when a teammate uses a special, or you have a number advantage. To help achieve this, you want to launch out your shield anytime combat is going to break out. This creates a threatening zone your opponents have to worry about. Your sub and special synergize incredibly well with this playstyle. Place beacons just a bit behind where your team is fighting, so you can make it back when you get splatted. The ink vac, from a gameplay point of view, is just your shield on steroids. In my opinion, it's probably the strongest special by a mile, so don't just randomly throw it out. When using a choke point and with some teammates nearby, your opponents literally can't do anything but run away and try again later. It's fantastic for finishing off objectives. You know, pop it near the Rainmaker platform, your team gets to dunk unhindered. You can guarantee a clam delivery, push the tower through a checkpoint. You get the idea. Just don't be that silly squid using it alone in the middle of the stage where an enemy just swims behind and splats you. A bit of a tangent there. Okay, so you're controlling the territory. When you do fight, there's a few things to keep in mind. First, if you don't have your shield up, you lose the fight, unless you outclass your opponent drastically. So make sure you have it before engaging. In fights, a lot of people's first instinct will be to flank around behind your shield and just splat you. Remember that you can then swim ahead of the tent, whip around and splat them instead. You can also trail behind it, so your opponents attack nothing as you splat them. As a general rule of thumb, you'll want to let short-range enemies approach you, while long-range enemies, you should do your best to push up on them. Keep in mind, your fire rate is as slow as can be. You cannot afford to waste shots. If you've ever played a fighting game, you have to employ similar strategies. Wait for your opponent to be locked in an animation, falling after a jump, rolling with the dualies, slowed by ink, then take your shot. As a note, when you first start, your KDA won't be very impressive. It's pretty difficult to get splats with this weapon. But it's okay, as long as you're helping your teammates boost their KDA, you'll be winning games. And with that, we've covered the Brellas. Quite the odd weapon class for sure. I just wanted to thank everyone, while we're here, for the love that's been shown for my videos. The nice and informative comments, the views. Prior to this, I was on Twitch. Let's just say it's been night and day. So, as always, please send a like if you enjoyed it, subscribe if you want to see more, and let me know anything I missed down in the comments. And until next time, stay fresh.